What you don't want is to be a shady figure, because nobody wants to do business with a shady figure, right? So setting up lighting so that you feel good and you look good and you're clear and you're easy to perceive, even if you're on a group call with 20 other people, that is important.
All right. She is not an actual cult leader, Hugh. That would be awkward, but she is, I don't know about evil genius, but she's definitely a mastermind at two very specific things: developing personal brands and unique style for highly visible leaders that raise their profiles, represents their values, and promotes their perspective with confidence, and helping lifestyle brands build cult-like followings. Maybe you are evil, Tamara, so they can take their signature offering from sample to staple with the sales to match. Thank you for joining me today. You look wonderful. You look amazing, and I'm so glad we finally connected after the last conference that all humanity went to last year. So it's good to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
How have you been?
I have been well. It has been an upsy-downsy year, that is for sure. But all things considered, everybody's healthy, everybody is stable and safe. I've been doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. I'm doing well, dealing with, having dealt with basically a year of staying indoors, which is not normal for me. I like to travel a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing a lot of Zoom,
Yes.
inordinate amount, which we'll talk about because, you're an expert at this stuff. And business has been going well. And, it's kind of a segue into when we had connected at the Copywriter Club in real life. It's like the last event that I think I went to in a long time,
Yeah.
and you immediately struck me as you just had this presence. We hung out and I was like, okay, Tamara's somebody I need to get to know and hang around. There's just something about you. And I've been seeing what you've been doing lately with your business, just teaching people to leverage what they're doing on Zoom, on screen, and certainly from the stage. So I'm all about that. So are you just horrified at how people are doing Zoom right now? Oh my God, that is awful.
It has been eye-opening. I think that, having been a digital entrepreneur for 4 or 5 years now, I'm very accustomed to the idea that there are two real teams, right? There's the team of people who get dressed, and there is team pajamas and yoga pants. And I get it. And they're pretty staunch members of each of those teams. And you're not always going to convert one from the other, although I know that you can imagine who I'd like to bring over to the other side. What I started to realize when March happened and everybody was starting to figure out how to work from home was that the folks that I know, because I come from originally a corporate background and then moved into digital entrepreneurship, folks that I know from the corporate world, they were really overwhelmed in a different kind of a way that I hadn't really anticipated. And that to me was that it became evident they were really suffering from loss. And that sort of turned into a depression where all of a sudden I realized, well, that's why people don't want to put on the camera. They don't want to get dressed. They don't want to put on makeup or do their hair or like any of the things that they would normally do if they were going into work. This is a tragedy for so many people who aren't accustomed to working the way that we are. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, I started to realize that, the folks who are digital entrepreneurs who we know about the tools you're supposed to use, but we don't necessarily have the polish that you get to practice when you're in the IRL 9-to-5 life. So on one side, you've got the lack of practice and polish from the IRL experience that digital entrepreneurs may not have. And then on the corporate side, you have the lack of knowledge of how to utilize technology effectively that you would get as a digital entrepreneur. So my skill set all of a sudden became, very clear that it was a different kind of skill set where I had both sides of the field and I could pair them and help people. To answer your question, am I horrified? Initially, I was until I realized like, oh, there's a lot more going on that I didn't have to adjust to the
Yeah.
way other people did. And I know you've talked about this a lot. You know, you need to be where your customers are. You have to understand like what they're ready to hear. And for a minute there, I had to catch up to where
Mm.
my customer was and realize that they weren't ready for me to be like, come on, you know, pull up your pants, let's get going. We got to make this happen. People were not ready for that. I think we've had a really long and um, very soft grace period as
Mm.
we all readjust during this weird time. And I think that that grace period is going to come to a close when we start to realize that just because, you know, it strikes midnight on January 1st doesn't mean that 2020 is gone. You know, I want 2020 to be hindsight as soon as possible, but it's not going to just flip a switch Y2K and it's over. It's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
we are now at a place where the world of work has permanently changed. And the way that we use technology like Zoom is going to be a regular occurrence, not just an oh my gosh, we need to fix this now. Here's what we have in the meantime.
Yeah, and as anything gets streamlined or into the mainstream, there are going to be people who rise to the top. They're going to say, "This is what it is. This is." I hate the cliche, but it's the new normal. Both of us are copywriters in our own right, right? But it is what
Yeah.
it is, and you're going to see people who are just going to elevate. They're just, "Hey, this is what it is. I'm going to stand out, and I'm going to excel." And I agree. I 1000% agree with you. I think you know, everyone's going to be on video. It's going to be so much more a big part of the workforce and work life. And there is something to be said about all this, because I'm not an image consultant. I brand ideas. I don't brand people and their visual like identity, right? But I know that's so important, and I've picked up a little bit of things here and there along the ways. You know, some of my, especially like, you know, gal pals, they'll be like, "Yo, you are not dressing like that on stage. You need to change this." You know, I get that, and Tamara, you work with so many people, you know, whether on the stage, on scene. Um, what are the things that go unsaid? Like, you dress well, you don't dress well, you present yourself well, you don't present yourself well. What are we communicating, whether we realize it or not, through how we carry ourselves?
Such a great question.
Cool.
Um, yeah, it's a really great question. When we make decisions, we like to think that we're doing it based on how smart a person is or how smart we are. You know, like we like to think that people are making decisions about us because we're smart and or we're talented or whatever it is that we individually value. What is interesting is that we don't really do it in that kind of a way as much as we want to believe we do. If you think about authors like Malcolm Gladwell in the book Glick, he talks about how we make first impressions in milliseconds. And those studies come up over and over and over again that, you know, a group of college students are given a second of a video of a person before they start a course and asked to formulate an opinion. And 6 months later, they go back to the same cohort of students and ask for their opinion again, and nothing has changed. We communicate most of what people believe about us before we say anything. So interestingly, there was a study done in the 60s at UCLA by a professor named Dr. Albert Merabi, and it's a very well-known and often quoted study about the believability of communication. And he discovered that words are 7% of the believability of your message, which to a copywriter is just, I mean,
Ouch.
did you break out in a sweat?
Right.
It's awful to know that.
Yeah.
And we're speaking in when we're speaking in the believability of
Mhm.
spoken communication. 7% of that believability is words. 30% is your tone, the intonation. And then 55% of the believability of your message is visual cues. If you turn off your camera, You erase over half of the opportunity your audience has to formulate an opinion about you. And if you're selling yourself, your ideas, your brand, you need that 55%. You'd have it in an in-person context. In a virtual context, you have it far less to begin with. To erase it completely really does a disservice to you and to your audience. So when you're communicating visually, you can communicate your entire know, like, and trust factor without ever having to say anything.
Mm, mm. Okay. I have a million questions. I'm going to try to organize my thoughts.
I love it.
I agree completely. I completely agree. Um, what does that mean for the everyday person who's trying to communicate on video? Does it mean we need to hire a stylist? Do we need to do an entire wardrobe change? Um, let me couch that in a story. Okay. Um, I've never been a fashion guy. Just worn whatever felt comfortable and it didn't make me feel ridiculous, right? Over the last couple of years, I've had to up my game. Like you said, I had to make decisions, and I had to be intentional about those decisions, and with the help of many of my friends who were horrified at what I was wearing, sometimes. And about 4 years ago, I did the first photo shoot, a real professional photo shoot with a legit celebrity photographer. He's a friend of mine named David Molnar. And I was like, D, how different could this be? And oh my gosh, like I could not recognize the guy he showed me in the photos after we were done. I was like, that's me? And it completely changed my perception of myself and what a stylist, he hired a stylist to do my hair, makeup. I brought my own clothes. He was just wear these 3-4 different outfits. We'll piece them together. And my God, completely changed the dynamic. I still use those pictures till this day because I've lost weight since then. So they don't look too old. What does all this mean though for the everyday person? Where do we start with all this?
That's a great question. And I think that there's two parts of this equation when you're working virtually, and especially if you are addressing audiences virtually. And when I use the word audience, it really can encompass anyone from your team to a prospect or an existing client to a virtual audience, if you were speaking on a virtual stage at a summit or something similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just use the word audience. There's a couple of things to consider. And the first part is you are now the person who is in charge of a lot of things that in real life you wouldn't have been in charge of, and you would have just accepted as available to you. Those things are, and speaking specifically, think of in terms of if you were corporate or going to a corporate office, or if you were speaking on a stage. If you are going to a corporate office, then you are going to be supported by the environment. In either case, you will be supported by the environment. There will be a certain level of furniture, a color palette that is already predetermined. The walls will be nice. There won't be anything extraneous in the space that doesn't belong. There will be a room that is outfitted with the right kind of lighting, sound, all of those elements that you never had to think about, you now are in control of, or you're not. So that's one part that we never had to think before about the environment in which we were delivering our messages, because it was thought of for us. We showed up and, maybe we took a walk around the stage if it's an on-stage presence thing and just like tested it out and made sure we were comfortable. But there was somebody else who was in control of the AV. There was somebody else who was in control of whether there was a chair and what kind of chair it was, or the mic, or, or if there was plants or whatever was there. So you would have this environment that supports your message. Now you don't. Now you need to figure out your environment in a way you never had to before. And then the second part is you were always in charge of this, but because you had the environment to support you, you may have thought about it a little bit less, but you were always in charge of how you visualize your brand for other people. It is always, of course, important to be comfortable. And Mike, you're just like all of my clients. The first and most important thing to them is that they want to feel comfortable. And you should. You know, in nearly 20 years of doing this, I can confidently say that the things that will make you feel the most comfortable are things that fit you well, fit your body and your personality well, no matter who you are. So that may not actually end up being your sweats. It may end up being something else if you have the opportunity to discover it.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking about, you know, how does this impact everyday person? If you're working from home or remotely, you are now the IT person, you're the AV person, you're the sound engineer, you know, you are in charge of all of these other aspects, and they're pretty easy to learn if you have somebody who can guide you through. I'm not a tech person, but I now lead people through how to set up their space, how to set up their lighting, how to set up the right kind of camera, the right kind of microphone, so that all of those pieces become things you no longer have to think about when you're delivering your message. If it's an important call, what you don't want is for your microphone to go on the fritz in the middle of a conversation. What you don't want is to be a shady figure, because nobody wants to do business with a shady figure, right? So setting up lighting so that you feel good and you look good and you're clear and you're easy to perceive, even if you're on a group call with 20 other people, that is important. Being able to draw attention to you is important, especially when you have a 13-inch screen to do it in, right? When you're in person, your audience can look around. They can see different pieces of the environment. They can take in other clues. They can rest. Zoom fatigue is real. Mm. So we need to assist our audience. It's incumbent upon us. It's our responsibility to make that an inviting experience for our audiences so that they want to hang around in the room with us. Right?
It's funny. I
Or
feel that. Yeah, I feel that just talking to you. Those who are listening on the podcast versus watching us on YouTube, I just wish you could see there's background here. You know, your flowers in the back match kind of, you know, the complexion of your face. Your jacket and your outfit sort of complement the wall, but I see dark accents on the vase. You know, that kind of. I notice. I'm a noticer of these things. I've had people tell me, you notice way too many things, but that's my job. You know, I'm in branding. I just have never really applied it visually. Right. To just kind of, you know, kind of hit the ball back into your court here. One of the big stylistic changes I made, just even in wardrobe, was just starting to wear a blazer. And the reason this worked, I'd been seeing this girl, you know, it didn't last very long, about 5 weeks, but 5 weeks was enough for her to take me shopping and say, you know, you need to really upgrade your wardrobe. She wanted to make me a politician or something like that, you know, and she's like, okay. and to your point, one of these things, we've met in person, so you know this, but one of the comments I get a lot when I meet people, you know, in real life is, I didn't realize you were so tall. I didn't realize you were such a big guy. I was like, yeah, because you see me from my chest up. Right?
And I get the opposite. The exact opposite.
Again, to each their own, right? And so I depended a lot on that when I would meet people in real life. I've learned how to harness a few things, my God-given things. My voice is deeper, it carries more. I'm 6'3". When I walk into a room, most people will notice I'm usually the only 6'3" Asian guy, let alone 6'3" guy. So I stand out. Now when I'm on Zoom, and this happened early when all the quarantine started, I didn't want to do video. And part of the reason was I was staying with family and I did not know where to shoot video. I was a shady figure. I sat at a desk. The background was a mirror in the room I was staying in. You could see the light, you know, reflecting back. It's just horrible. And I finally hired my one of my videographer friends down in Florida. I said, dude, this is going to sound very odd. I want to pay for an hour of your time. I'm going to FaceTime you on my phone. I'm going to show you the room I'm staying in. Where in God's name can I set up a backdrop? Because it's
Yeah,
actually getting in the way of me showing up for my audience. Like, and that's a big thing, right? Like, these are obstacles that get in the way of us communicating with our market. And I was like, my people need me. I can't, in this time where the whole world is shutting down, I was like, leaders don't go dark in times like this. And I'll be damned if I don't show up. But this is becoming a big problem. I don't know what to make my backdrop. So, all that to say, I completely resonate with what you're saying. And I think that, one of these things that we're all really learning is, I love what you say, is that's why a stylist is like a graphic designer for your personal brand. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like maybe what you see when you meet somebody, or how do you see potential in that? Whether it's in real life or on camera. Can you speak to a few of those things? 'Cause I'm fascinated by that stuff.
for sure. I First, I want to agree with you. I have heard you say that leaders don't go dark in the time of crisis. And the first time I heard you say that, I was like, yes, all the snaps. That's so true. And this is such a wild time that even for a leader, it's kind of hard to figure out how to be a leader right now. And this is a really great way to be able to harness your energy to be able to lead better. When I say that a stylist is like a graphic designer for your brand, what I mean is it's really about honing in on your energy, your essence, and your end goal. And that is true for your brand as well. So what are you trying to articulate in your brand? What qualities do you want your audience to know you for? And ultimately, what behaviors are you trying to inspire? When that comes to visual style, it's both internal and external, right? We're still doing this for ourselves because ultimately the goal is self-expression. The goal is communication of who we truly are. And so for me, I'm looking at who is this individual? There is the physical aspect of it where it's like, okay, well, this individual is 6'3", he's Asian, he has dark short hair that he likes to keep very trim, he's got a smile in his eyes invariably, he has a deep voice that does carry, so there's presence there. And sometimes maybe you think when he's not talking that he's a quiet guy until you know him, and then you realize that's not the case. How do we pair the visuals for Mike with what is physical and energetic about Mike? Because there's also, and I know you're really into your Enneagram, there's also all of those propositions about you, that the way that I communicate might be tough love, but deep inside there's a marshmallow.
Mhm.
And it would be easier for people to know that I have that part of that warmth in me. I can't communicate that with words. It's not my nature to do that. But maybe my stylist can help me find the right colors, the right combinations, and the right textures to help people to feel that about me. Because so much of what we take in with our eyes is a feeling. It's not just what we see, it's what we perceive. And that's why when I'm noticing things about people, it isn't just the physicality. It's also the stuff that, as you said, goes without saying, but not everybody captures. I'm a noticer too. And it's part of the job, but it's also, I think, innately who we are. That's part of why we do what we do, is because we have that capability to notice so much. So when I'm working with a person, it's about here's their end goal, got it. Also, here's who they are physically, which we want to leverage and in the best ways that we can. And also here's who they are energetically, and who they are at their core, their essence. And how do we make that visual so that other people can pick up on these little Easter egg cues that they may not otherwise. I mean, if everybody shows up in a t-shirt and jeans, That's, it's the alpha and omega of dressing. I think that might have been Armani who said that, but it is, right? But you can't define anything about a person. Everybody's going to look the same. It's a uniform. I mean, maybe you can define that they're Fonzie, or maybe you can define that they're like Marlon Brando or James Dean. But
Yeah.
I don't look like that when I put on jeans and a t-shirt. So I look just like anybody else in jeans and a t-shirt. If I can extrapolate from a person's personality and from the persona that they want to put forward, then I can help them articulate that in the way that they put themselves together in real life or on the screen.
It's so interesting that you shared that, because while I said just a few minutes ago, I've never really been into fashion, I hated the idea of going to school where everyone had to be, in a uniform. I
Right.
didn't go to a school like that, but being Korean, my background, if you go to school in Korea, everyone's in a uniform. Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's in a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
I played sports. That makes sense. You're in uniforms for the team. And yet, as soon as you mentioned that, well, let's say everyone has to wear a t-shirt and jeans, I would buck against that. Like, I'm okay wearing t-shirt and jeans, but if everyone's wearing it, I'm like, So there's a little bit of self-expression somewhere inside me that wants to kind of come out. And I love that you say that about communicating an aspect of someone's personality visually, because they don't have you don't have the time to really get to know somebody like that in a
Mm-hmm.
snap, meeting, or, hey, nice to meet you at this event. You don't really get to get that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what's like the transformation you've seen in some of your clients? Like, how have they come out on the other side of this? Do they like feel stronger, feel more charismatic? Like, how is this all tied together?
I love that. So it's really, to me, it's very fun. I mean, this is not an altruistic job because I get so much out of seeing somebody see themselves for the first time.
Mm,
And
yeah.
often that's a thing. And, to your point, yeah, there's this rebellion that I want to have about the jeans and t-shirts uniform or whatever the uniform happens to be, but I don't necessarily know how to express it. I don't know what it is, but I know I don't like that it's the same. Like, I don't want same, but so often my clients they're not like complete disasters. This is not what to wear, right? This is real life. This is people who know that there is something that they can't articulate and know that they need our assistance to do that. Just like when you hire somebody to create a website for you or to write your email copy or sales pages, you need to articulate certain things. This isn't your area of expertise and you call in an expert to do it. And the same is true when my clients call me. So what they come out with on the other side is a greater sense of comfort in themselves, a sense of stability that they may not have realized could have been tied to feeling good in their bodies. And also this incredible ability to perform in a maximal way that they didn't know there was another level to that. And nor would they have even imagined that their performance was tied to something like their mode of dress.
Mm,
It's there somewhere. Like, a lot of my clients come to me and say, I've built a life where I haven't had to grow up in this way, where I haven't had to think about it. I'm a digital entrepreneur. I can work from wherever I want to, and I have. And now I have a company where I'm meeting with more and more senior level executives and, venture capitalists or potential partners. And I've realized I'm not coming to the table the way that I think I need to be taken as seriously as I should be taken. And I don't know what to do about that. And nor is it my area. I'm very
mm,
much concentrating in this other area, and that takes all of my attention. I need somebody who only focuses in your area where this is all of your attention, right? So there's a level of sophistication and expertise that sees each other and can come together to work well together. And then it's at that point where I start realizing, oh my goodness, like, these details are not things I would have thought of. And now, when people see me, even just walking down the street, and this is one of my favorite things to have happen, is one of my clients WhatsApping me to say, okay, listen, like, I don't feel great telling you this, but I feel great telling you this. So I have to tell you, I was walking down the street And this guy was walking the other way and he was approaching me. And I saw him look all the way up and all the way down and then look me in the eye and then look at these shoes. And then in my head, I was like, oh, yeah, you see the shoes. And this person who really, like, the height of fashion was another pair of Air Force Ones, but this was not that. And that was when they started to build an appreciation for, it's okay to feel really great in my skin. And it is so interesting when somebody catches on to a message that I have put out so subtly. I'm not a logo person. I'm not, for a person who's into branding, I don't like for people to be wearing labels that aren't their own. My goal is that you are your label, and the outfits we create together show you, not some other brand. So when he says to me, this person noticed the subtlety of the message, really, it was very subtle, but for somebody who can pick up on that language, they understood immediately who they were talking to, what they could have been about, because they have this association. And it's those associations that can create an extra sense of mastery over oneself.
I love that. I have experienced that as I've made my own little incremental changes in how I show up. I think that's huge. I feel different when I put on a blazer.
Yeah.
And I presented for the first time earlier in early 2020 when we still had events going on. And I brought these two blazers that, this girl and I had gone shopping, and she's like, you should get fitted for these and these will look good on you, blah, blah, blah. And, well, on a very practical level, I didn't have to iron my shirts because I just wore a t-shirt, which was hallelujah, right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt different because I don't wear the blazers when I'm not presenting. But it's almost like I step into another version of myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is badass presenter Mike. And I'm putting on this jacket, or I'm wearing these shoes that I never wear outside of present. It's like my uniform there. It's like an alter ego. My friend Todd
Mm-hmm.
Herman talks a lot about that. And,
Mm-hmm.
certainly, if I'm going out to social functions or going out to meet somebody for dinner or whatever it is, I know regardless, I like how I look in these. I like how I feel. And that makes me just show up in a different way. Oh yeah, I love it. So you still do this with some clients, limited number, I'm sure. And you have a very practical gift for everybody here today too, because we've been talking about showing up on video. So can you tell us a little bit about these, video call spoilers?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I know that it is so frustrating to figure out how to look better on screen, how to make your whole vibe come alive on screen. So I put together a list called 15 video spoilers and how to fix them, which I would love for your listeners to access. It's available at, tamaraglick.com/brand new podcast. And I know that'll be in the show notes as well. It will give you some of the fastest, easiest ways to fix the unintentional video spoilers that have been going on in your background all the time. So I would love for you to be able to explore that, see how fast and easy it is to upgrade your video appearance, and let me know. I always want to know how that helps.
You guys need to get this. All you tuning in need to get this. I don't know how many hours I've spent on Zoom this year, and even for even for those who are in the corporate space, they've spent so much more time. But those of us who are building a personal brand, this is why I had Tamara come on. The image and that side is not my expertise, but it's a huge part of it. And I would be remiss to say I don't think about it. I have, just not as intentionally. And I'm so glad we met and crossed paths. So thanks so much for joining us today. This was incredibly practical and also incredibly inspiring. Thank you for sharing this stuff.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Oh, it's great. Okay, see you soon.
Absolutely.